Rosie, written by Amalia Williamson. Interior kitchen, evening. Rosie, 14, and her little brother Max, 4, are sitting at the kitchen table in their tiny home. Rosie is wearing an oversized t-shirt that looks like it belongs to a man, and Max is wearing a bright red t-shirt that barely covers his Superman undies. Rosie has large sheets of craft paper strewn across the table, full of imaginative drawings and paintings that show an in-depth look into her innocent mind. Rosie is happily painting a portrait of Max while he paints in the corners of the page, lazily but content. Rosie hears a door open off screen and the sound of classic rock and giggling streams out of the room. Joe, 47, and the children's mother, Denise, 39, walk into the scene. Joe is wearing dirty denim jeans and his shirt is completely undone, exposing his hairy chest. Denise is pretty, but due to the bags under her eyes, looks old and tired. She wears a waitressing uniform and is putting on her earrings. Denise gives Rosie and Max a quick kiss on the head and grabs her purse from the kitchen table, detaching it from a sticky painting.
Ugh, Rosie, move my purse before you paint.
She kisses Rosie and Max on the head and rushes toward the front door, grabbing her coat from the couch.
And don't forget to feed Max. There should be some hot dogs in the fridge.
Denise opens the door and leaves. Joe opens the fridge, grabs a beer, cracks the bottle open on the kitchen counter, and takes a long swig. He walks over to Rosie and Max, admiring Rosie, then the paintings.
Could I have one of these? My wife would love them.
Rosie looks up from her painting, wrinkling her face at Joe, and shakes her head. No.
No.
Joe snorts and throws a $20 bill onto the table. Rosie watches as he saunters back into her mother's room. She looks back down at her painting, then at Max, who's licking one of the paintbrushes with blue paint on it.
No, Max!
She snatches the brush from his hand and Max begins to wail. She wipes the paint from his face with the sleeve of her sweater.
I'm hungry.
Rosie opens their fridge and it's nearly barren, save for a few bottles of beer and a carton of baking soda. She checks all of the cupboards and finally finds a box of cornflakes. She shakes some into a bowl and hands them to Max. He happily begins to eat the cereal, watching Rosie while he munches. Rosie climbs onto a chair to reach the top of their fridge, grabbing the mason jar that rests on top. There's nothing but a few quarters and pennies at the bottom of the jar. Rosie looks at Max, who is smiling at her while chewing on his cornflakes. She glances at her paintings, then at the $20 bill sitting on the table. Exterior, bus stop, day. Rosie is standing by a bus stop with Max by her side. Max is pulling Rosie's paintings out of a garbage bag and handing them to Rosie, who displays them on the sidewalk. He pulls out a painting of himself and their mother. He hands the painting to Rosie.
No, Max. You hang on tight to this one. It's not for sale.
A bus comes to a stop right in front of the children and interrupts Rosie's train of thought. She gives the painting back to Max and watches as businessmen and women begin to pile out of the bus. Some people nonchalantly toss their pocket change at the children's feet, and Max happily gathers the shiny coins. Rosie tries holding her paintings up proudly to show them off, but most of the men and women walk briskly past the children. A woman walks up to them. She gestures to the painting that Max is holding with his hands.
How much for this one?
Rosie looks at Max, who is grinning at her, then up at the woman.
20.
The woman hands Rosie a $20 bill and smiles, then gently takes the painting from Max's hand, replacing it with another $20 bill. As she walks away, she turns back to wink at the children. Interior kitchen, night. A mason jar full of cash sits next to a pizza box on the kitchen table. Rosie is wearing an oversized t-shirt and dances to Britney Spears playing from a CD player while she eats pizza and paints. Her dance is temporarily interrupted when she hears giggling coming from her mother's bedroom. Joe walks into the kitchen toward Rosie until she's up against the fridge. He is dangerously close to her, and she pulls down her t-shirt, suddenly feeling self-conscious. He gently pushes her aside and opens the fridge. He takes out 2 beers and cracks them open on the kitchen counter, handing one to Rosie. She grabs the beer and takes a sip. Joe smiles, grabbing a slice of pizza, then exits the kitchen. As soon as Rosie hears the door to her mother's room shut, she turns up the volume on the CD player and picks up her paintbrush to begin another painting. Cut to exterior bus stop, day, 2 years later. Rosie, now 16, is sitting at the bus stop accompanied by her paintings, but this time without Max. Her paintings appear to be much less imaginative and uninhibited. Rosie looks tired and bored and picks her nails as the bus pulls up to the stop. She perks up as businessmen and women pour out of the vehicle, but people shake their heads at her or pretend she isn't there as they quickly walk by. A A businessman, wielding a briefcase and texting on his phone, approaches Rosie's setup. He doesn't notice her nearly empty jar of coins on the sidewalk and kicks it over, shattering the glass.
Fuck. Shouldn't you be in school?
The man kicks some shards of glass out of his pathway as he continues walking, rumbling down the sidewalk away from Rosie. Rosie scrambles to collect the few coins from the jar and packs up her things to leave. Interior kitchen, evening. Rosie arrives home to find Max, now 6 years old, placing a blanket on their mother, who is passed out with a still-lit cigarette in her hands. The TV is on and Max's backpack is laying open on the kitchen table, its contents covering most of the surface area. Rosie shoves Max's books aside and unloads her paintings from the day, adding the few measly coins she had collected to the almost empty jar on top of the fridge. After taking the cigarette from his mother's hand and stubbing it out in an ashtray, Max sits down on the couch. He grabs the remote and picks up the open bag of chips sitting next to him.
How many did you sell today?
Something in Rosie snaps and she charges towards Max, snatching the bag of chips from his hand.
These aren't good for you.
Hey, I'm hungry.
Rosie walks to the fridge and, finding only beer inside, grabs one and takes a long swig.
Give me those chips
Shut
back.
up and go to bed!
Max, stunned, turns off the TV and walks to his room, shutting the door gently behind him. Rosie looks at Max's bedroom door, then at her mother, who hasn't moved an inch. She takes another swig of beer. Exterior bus stop, day. Rosie is sitting at the bus stop again with her paintings, but her jar is empty. A car pulls up next to the curb, and the driver rolls down his window, looking at Rosie.
I'll buy all of your paintings if you come for a ride with me.
Rosie hesitates for a moment, then packs up her jar, her art, gets into his car. Interior man's car traveling, day. Rosie sits in shotgun as the man drives in silence. She looks out of the window as he drives, and soon the man pulls into a dark alleyway. He turns off his car and offers Rosie a cigarette. She refuses, but he lights one for himself. He pulls out a wad of cash from his pocket and sets it on the dash of the car. Rosie looks at the man, and he inches closer to her as he puts his hand on her thigh. Exterior bus stop, day. The man pulls back up to the curb where Rosie sells her paintings. Shaking, she manages to open her door and pull herself out, but not before taking the wad of cash from the dashboard. She slams the car door and turns to walk down the sidewalk before she can leave. The man throws her paintings out of the open window at her feet and speeds away. Interior kitchen, evening. Rosie is sitting at the kitchen table with a blank canvas in front of her. Max is eating a microwave dinner while watching TV. Trembling still, she pulls the wad of cash from her pocket and begins to count it. Exterior bus stop, day. Rosie is standing at the bus stop, this time with no paintings to sell, just herself.